Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we're going to take a look at the top 10 cannabis industry news stories of the week, brought to you by Benzinga. Starting with number 10, the previous CEO of Canopy Growth, Bruce Linton, and Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank are betting big on psychedelics. Cannabis industry titan Bruce Linton and Shark Tank investor Kevin O'Leary are backing a new psychedelic startup called MindMed. We just did our own podcast on the same topic. There was a lawyer from Vancouver, BC, our friend Robert Laurie with Ad Lucem, and then Katrina Glogowski is an angel investor and attorney here in Seattle. We sat down at the World Trade Center in Seattle, talked about the business behind psychedelics and the future of mushrooms and LSD and all of those things and where that could lead internationally. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. Spoiler alert, it's big business. Number 9 is Canada's illicit pot market is still robust as prices beat the legal source. The difference between cannabis prices on the illicit and legal markets in the fourth quarter of last year widened significantly from the prior 3-month period, according to new figures from Statistics Canada. So the average price of cannabis on the black market during fourth quarter 2019 was $5.73 per gram. I was just up in Canada for the Lift Expo. I can tell you that concentrates were like $60 a gram. If you go into a, quote, medical store, they'll sell to anybody. That's $10 a gram in those stores. So half that on the legacy market is obviously not going to deter people from buying it illegally. And we're seeing that in every single rollout, right? You can look at Nevada, which probably has the highest prices because they have the least amount of stores, and prices are still almost $30 a gram. Inventory issues are always an issue in new markets as well. So number 8 is that there's a hungry market in Canada. Industry insiders urge patience over a limited supply of cannabis edibles. 2.0 in Canada started in October, but of course, when you just get the green light, you have to then start making it before it can get on the shelf, before you have an opportunity to build up a decent amount of inventory. So cannabis retailers say the appetite for cannabis-infused edibles is outstripping the supply, and the provincial distributor can't say when that will change. The challenges that they've seen with legalization 1.0 are the same with 2.0. And so they're working closely with provinces and retailers as the new categories develop. But again, it's the same old issue with every new rollout. Number 7 on the list is you'll be able to buy cannabis directly from Ontario producers, but there's a catch. That would be nice if we could do that. Washington is trying to implement a law where producers can sell directly to the public. That would increase tourism, obviously. I think that'll end up going that way, but it's going to take a few more years. But this number 7 on the list of top 10 cannabis industry news stories is that this spring, Ontario is going to start to see farm gate cannabis retail. Much like a vineyard or brewery, customers will be able to go to a grow facility and buy their cannabis directly from the producer. Licensed producers, or LPs, will be legally required to first sell their cannabis to the Ontario Cannabis Store. It's a government-owned monopoly wholesaler, and then buy it back from them before it can be sold to the consumer. I love that. I mean, whatever loophole you have to do, that's great, but that is ridiculous. Love it. All right, number 6, global cannabis market to hit $42 billion by 2024. So the worldwide legal cannabis spending hit almost $15 billion last year, up from a little over $10 billion in 2018. Legal cannabis sales grew over 45%, almost $15 billion last year. It led primarily by adult use markets in Canada, California, and Massachusetts, and supplemented by the unique approach to medical markets in Florida and Oklahoma, according to 2020 update to the state of legal cannabis markets by ArcView Research and BDS Analytics. Illinois is another one of those states that can't keep quite enough products on the shelf, 2-hour wait lines in line. Once New York goes on board, and that's going to kind of just open up the entire East Coast. I like the idea of Massachusetts. There's a lot of colleges there, from MIT to Boston College. I think there's about 5 universities in that area there. And so huge market, I think, underreported at this point. Whereas Florida, I think there's a lot of optimism, and yet the weather conditions are not favorable. And I'm not even talking about hurricanes and all that. I'm just talking about the humidity for a dense flower. It's not going to work out well when you're going to compete with the likes of your neighbors in Puerto Rico, for example, once you can export from state to state. it's not going to be a long-term play for Floridians, I'm afraid. Number 5 on the list is Bernie Sanders pledges illegal marijuana in all 50 states on day 1 as president. If elected, Bernie Sanders says he's going to legalize cannabis via an executive order on his first day in office. So with just a couple of days after the Iowa caucus, Bernie Sanders is pledging to immediately legalize marijuana in all 50 states if he's elected to the White House. We almost have 36 states that are approved. It's just a matter of time. So why not grab the low-hanging fruit for some of those votes? It's obviously a play on money. The U.S. is broke. Kansas is taking a look at that too. They don't have money. They want it. There's a lot of states that are going to legalize just for that tax revenue. Number 4 is Australia expedites revenue of medical cannabis products, the Epidiolex. So if approved, Epidiolex would become only the 2nd product in Australia's Register of Therapeutic Goods. That's from GW Pharma, publicly traded company. I'm not a fan of synthetic cannabinoids. There's another company, a buddy of mine that has passed away from multiple sclerosis, used Marinol. It's synthetic, and it just made him lethargic and sleepy and tired, and he didn't like it. He preferred joints. He wanted to smoke, and rather than vape or whatever, that was his deal. And he can do whatever he wants. He wanted to die as comfortably as he wanted, and that's what he got. But again, the Epidiolex and synthetic products like Marinol, just not a fan. But number 3 on the list is the European Union's urges member nations to vote for the World Health Organization's cannabis rescheduling recommendations. The approval would be a positive step forward for international cannabis companies. The European Union is urging member nations to vote in favor of the 3 World Health Organization cannabis rescheduling recommendations ahead of the March session, the United Nations Commission on Narcotic Drugs. That's going to be a phenomenal push. I think the U.S. obviously is the big headwind against that. Their publicly traded prisons are a great way to have modern slavery and keep minorities locked up for nonviolent offenses. And I just think that that's going to be a big headwind with the unions of the police force, unions of these publicly traded companies, lobbyists, everyone who benefits, right? Otherwise, it's just a plant. You should be able to smell a rose, smoke a dandelion, eat cannabis. You should be able to do whatever you want as an adult. Number 2, long lines, high demand cause Illinois adult use marijuana stores to ration flower. A few weeks into the recreational cannabis sales in Illinois, there's flower supply remains tight. So during the first month of adult use sales in Illinois, there's a limited supply of cannabis. So they forced the marijuana retailers to limit the amount sold to individual customers, with some shops even requiring customer appointments. So while flower is flying off the shelves at most Illinois dispensaries, many people are buying edibles and vape products. Washington's medical use or medical market back in 2014, 2013, they required appointments, and you couldn't make a same day appointment. So you had to call, make an appointment for another day, and then you had to show up. If you showed up 15 minutes early or 15 minutes late, they would cancel your membership. So this isn't normal, but we have seen that there's issues in every single rollout, whether it's medical or rec, there is inventory issues regardless. So the 2-hour wait lines, the high prices, the lack of availability, all of those things. I am kind of surprised to see them limit sales to individuals. Most stores would just sell it until they're sold out, but they're obviously trying to get as many people to try it as possible. I think that's good on them. Hopefully they'll be able to get more of that into the stores for the medical patients, but more of the same. Number 1 is Doug Ford expects Ontario to lead the nation in pot shop locations. Ontario Premier Doug Ford had some sharp words about cannabis executives who blamed Ontario for its part in causing an industry-wide slump last year. He said, maybe I'll shoot back a little bit. They didn't have the supply ready, he said during a recent interview with Bloomberg. And yet executives from Afria and Canopy and Aurora, they recently blamed Ontario for not having enough retail locations available for consumers to buy products, which resulted in weaker than expected earnings. Which prompted Ford to then fire back at the critics, pledging to lead the country in retail cannabis outlets. Wasn't that the guy who smoked crack? Maybe that was his brother or something. I don't know. But anyways, Vancouver, BC is even much more limited. There's very few stores in Vancouver Island not Victoria, but in Vancouver downtown, there's not a lot of stores. So Ontario, I realize that with Toronto there's a huge market. Very few people are coming west because of that. So I noticed with the International Cannabis Business Conference and the LIFT conference, there were fewer than expected people, LPs there because of the lack of presence. So hopefully there will be more stores everywhere. You're going to have to wait and find out. So with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.